What's up, everybody, and welcome to the channel. It's your boy Mello. Hope everyone out there is doing well. Happy Mental Health Monday. For a while, I've been trying to figure out how I can bring you guys some real thought-provoking and helpful content. I'm real passionate about mental health, so every Monday I've decided to dedicate to mental health and exploring Black mental health. Some of you may be thinking, well, what does he know? Not everything, but I do know a trick or two. I have 11 years of experience navigating the foster care system as well as working on my own mental health challenges. I'm currently an MHA2 working in the mental health field, and I also have the cultural competency piece, which I feel is greatly missing in the mental health field. As we discuss mental health and the various aspects surrounding it, I wanted to break this video down into 3 simple parts: the statistics and challenges surrounding Black people in mental health, my opinion, views, and experience with mental health, and how can we fix it. Now let's start with some basic information and challenges surrounding Black people in mental health. Black adults in the US are more likely to report persistent symptoms of emotional distress such as sadness and hopelessness. What does that mean? So basically, on average, you have Black people who are saying that just day to day in, they feel more sad. What is this for? You know, what am I doing all of this? Is any of this have any meaning? Is my outcome ever going to change, right? So day to day, we have more Black people saying that they feel more sad and more hopeless than their white counterparts. Black adults living below the poverty line are more than twice as likely to report psychological distress than those with more financial security. What do we mean when we say psychological distress? Very good question. Think of a time when you felt sadness. Maybe it was after losing a loved one or losing your job. How did you respond to the situation? While some people have no difficulty dealing with these events, they may trigger unpleasant feelings that make it impossible to cope and carry on with normal activities in others. For those of us who experience these unpleasant feelings and have difficulty coping, we are experiencing psychological distress. Now, I want to break this down even further, and I want to give you guys an example of what psychological distress could look like. Disclaimer, I am in no way clinically licensed to give anyone a diagnosis, so this is not me giving a diagnosis. Rather, this is me giving an example of what psychological distress could look like. Back in June of 2021, Sha'Carri Richardson, she was suspended from the Olympics after failing a drug test. Once she learned through a reporter that unfortunately her mother had passed away, Sha'Carri Richardson then chose to self-medicate and smoke weed, which led to her failing her drug test. Let's take a dive into that scenario, and let's kind of just take a deep dive into that. So remember, going back to what is psychological distress, think of a time when you felt sadness. In this case, it was Sha'Carri Richardson after finding out about the passing of her mother. Maybe it was after losing a loved one or losing your job. How did you respond to the situation? Well, Sha'Carri Richardson chose to respond to the situation by self-medicating, which means that she chose to smoke weed, so she went to go get high. While some people have no difficulty dealing with these events, they may trigger unpleasant feelings that make it impossible to cope and carry on with normal activities and others. I think that is a very important piece to pay attention to when they say impossible to cope and carry on with normal activities. So Sha'Carri Richardson, who was on track to be an Olympic star, to compete in the Olympics, doing track and running every day, that was normal activities to her. You have to remember, she has submitted drug test after drug test and has passed all of them up until the point that she unfortunately found out that her mother had passed, which she then chose to self-medicate. She could no longer carry on with normal activities. For those of us who experience these unpleasant feelings and have difficulty coping, we are experiencing psychological distress. You know, looking back in hindsight, it is one of those things that is very interesting, because I don't think anyone at that time was like, you know what, Sha'Carri, is this something with mental health going on? Like, is everything okay? I don't think we ever took the time to really check on her and really see if she was okay or not. And I don't think anyone even labeled it as mental health. I think that is a big problem, is that even with Black people and something could be mental health related, we're not stopping to take the time to even see if that is the case. Again, as I shared earlier, I am not clinically licensed to diagnose anyone, and that is not me giving a diagnosis. Rather, that was me giving you guys an example of what psychological distress could look like. Understand that in the Black community, we are seeing and hearing about people we love, close ones, family members, friends, dying all the time. oftentimes that does lead to black people self-medicating. Okay, remember, we've got to talk about this. We've got to start to want better. We've got to start to kind of open up that can, and we've got to kind of filter through those things and work out the kinks. This is all about getting the conversation started. This is all about how could we better our mental health as black people. I just said all that to say a lot of black people, we could be experiencing psychological distress among other things. When we are finding out that we're losing a loved one, or just other mental health challenges that we may have. I want to encourage you guys to all go and see someone who can help you, who can diagnose you with your mental health challenges, or even start to talk about it. Okay. Now, despite all of that, only 1 in 3 black adults who need mental health services actually receive them. As well, black adults are less likely to receive consistent care, less frequently included in research, and are more likely to use emergency rooms or primary care rather than mental health services. So, other challenges and stigmas present with black people in mental health. One study showed that 63% of black people believe a mental health condition is a sign of personal weakness. As a result, many black people feel ashamed about having mental health challenges. We have got to stop this. 63%, that is over half of us. That's over half of us who believe that even having mental health is a weakness. Have to stop confusing being human with being weak. You guys, we are human before we are anything else, okay? And humans, we break and we bend, okay? So that means sometimes we gotta treat ourselves delicately. And that means not only on the outside as we would, right? Because we, like I said, we bend and break bones. But we also have to treat and be delicate with our insides, okay? And that means the stuff that we may not, see, and the stuff that we may not even be able to understand. And I mean mental health. What goes on up here, okay? Guys, we're human. Gotta try to break those generational curses. Not talking about your mental health is a generational curse. Not receiving support for your mental health is a generational curse. Now let's move into why some of these barriers are even present, right? Like, why are black people having such difficulty kind of connecting or even getting help for their mental health? Historically, black people have been negatively affected by prejudice, discrimination, and racism by the healthcare system. Very interesting because, a few years back, I saw a Facebook post and it says something along the lines of, doctors are to black women what cops are to black men. And I had to really sit and think what that thought. And I've always heard that, I've always heard from black women that they've just never really felt like heard. They've never felt, that they were treated right by doctors and things like that. The study shows even in, the birth rate, a lot of black babies are dying in the hospitals at an alarming rate compared to their counterparts. Just not getting the proper treatment and the proper care. We're not being handled with care, unfortunately, in the healthcare system. Provider bias and a lack of cultural competency often ends up in misdiagnosis. Inadequate treatment often leads to mistrust among the black community. And I think that we're seeing this a lot in the mental health field, right? Is that oftentimes we'll have providers come in. And when we say providers, we mean that's anyone who is providing you a service, right? A mental health service. That can look like a therapist, a counselor, a skills trainer, a behavior specialist, a therapeutic behavior specialist worker, a family advocate, a youth advocate, right? As I was saying, is what we're seeing is that they'll come in with the education, so they'll know the paperwork side of it, but they will lack cultural competency. So they won't be able to understand why a family is maybe struggling, or why this service isn't working for this family, or why this support isn't working for this family. It's because they don't have that cultural piece to understand, like, look, the books can't teach you what's going on out here in these streets, okay? Oftentimes, I feel like that is a lot of piece of where the disconnect is coming from. It's very important to know if your provider is culturally competent. And later in the video, I give you guys a few good questions that you can ask your provider to kind of assess and get a feel of what level of cultural competency that they're at. We got to start to get diagnosed, you guys. Just like when you take your car to the shop and they hook it up and they tell you, everything that's going on with it. It's the same thing, but it just looks a little different. Sit down, you'll take a few assessments, you'll answer a few questions. But we got to know what's going on up here, okay, you guys? A lot of us black folk, We don't know what's going on up here. Like I say, if you know what's wrong with your car, you should know what's wrong with you. Okay, now let's move into how can we fix it. I know throughout the video I've given you guys, you know, some examples and maybe some of my opinions as well. But let's look into other ways we can fix it. I think a big part of black people and mental health and what we can do is fix it is we've got to start by normalizing the conversation. What is normal, right? Like, what do I mean by that? I mean have frequent, open conversations about mental health and the barriers that you're having with them. Start small, you guys. Talk to someone that you trust, talk to someone that you're familiar with, and get into the habit of even being able to express your feelings. I cannot tell you how many black boys and black men I know that can't even say or tell you that I'm sad. When was the last time that you were able, as a black man, I'm talking to my black men right now, when was the last time as a black man you were able to just tell someone, you know, I was sad, you know, or I cried the other day? We have to be able to start to talk about that, right? Because black men and black boys, we are human first, okay? We're human. We all need some time to reflect, to think, and be intentional. When I say intentional, I mean, what is it that I'm feeling? What is it that I'm going through? I feel like a lot of times people can't even pinpoint what it is that they're going through or what it is that even makes them feel. And do I want to get better? You know, I feel like that is a huge piece of it, because I feel like a lot of times, you know, at least I'll speak on the professional end, you know, we're helping these young people because, you know, their parents want them to get help, and we can throw as much tools and support and we can dig into our big bag of tricks, but at the end of the day, if that person does not want change, if that person does not want better, it's going to be for naught, right? So you have to want better, and you have to actually think about that. How is it that I want this situation to get better? What do I want that to look like? How am I going to work towards that? Be intentional. And we've got to stop self-medicating. This has been a continuous thing throughout this conversation, right? You know, speaking from lived experience, I've seen it. I've seen time and time again black people turn to weed to self-medicate. You know, you don't want to feel anything, or you just want to forget about it all. I get it, because weed can be amazing, right? I self-medicated when I was younger, but remember, it's all about going to that intent piece. And I had to make a choice. Do I want weed to continue to consume me, or do I want better? Remember, it's a journey, you guys, but we all start somewhere. All about going back to that intent piece, okay? Do I want to get better, and what do I want that situation to look like? Another thing that I feel like we can help to better black people and mental health is make sure your provider is culturally competent. Ask your provider questions to help gather if this would even be a good fit for you. So remember earlier in the video I told you guys I'd be going over a few questions to help ask your provider to see if they're culturally competent. Okay, here we go. First one. Have you treated other black people or received training in cultural competence for black mental health? If not, how do you plan to provide me with culturally sensitive, patient-centered care? Basically, this is asking your provider, do you know how to work with black folk? Do you know how to work with black folk, brown folk, anybody that is, you know, that kind of comes, you know, from culture and that may not be of your culture? Like, do you know how to work with other cultures, okay? If you have not received that training, then how do you plan to provide me and my family with culturally sensitive care? Second question. How do you see our cultural backgrounds influencing our communication and my treatment? I think this is a very important question to ask your provider, because oftentimes what I see in the mental health field is that I'm seeing providers, they're talking at their families and they're not talking with their families, okay? And this is a huge piece, and I feel like a huge disconnect, is because as providers, we should always be willing to sit down and have a conversation with our families, kind of see how we can best support them, okay? And the last question is, do you use a different approach in your treatment when working with patients from different cultural backgrounds? If the answer is no, that is a red flag. I currently have a caseload of 35 youth that I work with, and when I tell you guys I fine tweak and tune each of my services to fit the youth and the family that I'm working with, I fine tweak and tune all of my services, right? Because each family is different, and we should be, like I said, we should be having conversations with our families, okay? And we should be figuring out how we could best support them. Your provider should be meeting you where you're at. And if it doesn't feel like that, then that may not be the provider for you. I want to encourage any black people who may need a little extra support to go forth and seek it. Mental health has changed, and there are options out there, okay, you guys? Do not suffer. Speak up. That's it for me today, you guys. I had a really great time researching this, and I'm really excited to bring this to you guys. Next week, we'll take a dive into what mental health looks like today and different options and programs that you have for your kids. As I shared earlier, I currently work in the mental health field, and I work with youth ages 5 to 21. And I love to give you guys more of an insight on the support that we provide and an overlook of modern mental health. If you guys enjoyed this video, please go ahead and leave me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, as that's okay too, because there's always room for improvement over here. Whether you gave me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, please go ahead and drop a comment below. Let me know, what do you guys think of mental health and what are your thoughts on it? I love to hear anyone's experience they have receiving mental health services or just navigating your own mental health. As always, please don't forget to subscribe, as I'm up and coming and anything helps. Support a Black business today. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Peace.